So back in like 2018, I sat down to rewatch The Lion King 1.5 with my mom, and about a quarter of the way through, she went, "Oh, so this is about Judaism." Hey, squad. Welcome to your triannual glimpse into my twisted psyche. Got a graphic novel coming out next spring about cults and rabbits, so keep your eyes peeled for updates from Twitter and your local obelisk.
Remember to smash that like button.
Yeah, that's why these videos take so long to come out. Sorry, guys. Thank you so much for your patience. Okay, so a lot of you will probably already consider Timon Jewish. But yeah, there's a reason the website Jew or Not Jew scores Timon a 10 on the Jewishness scale. His canonical last name is Berkowitz.
Timon Berkowitz, you've been found guilty of
being super homo.
Ma fills the role of the stereotypical Yiddish mama who fusses over her son to excess and will not shut up about his potential. Uncle Max shares his namesake with Uncle Max from The Sound of Music. You know, the gay and Jewish-coded family friend. In the words of the Lion King's Broadway director, Julie Taymor, I mean, Timon and Pumbaa are borscht-belt Jewish humor. And we can take this whole Jewish thing further. After all, where does Timon grow up? Not the lush greenery of the Pride Lands, but the harsh desert climate described by Timon as
the pit of shame.
It should be noted that, you aren't supposed to read the Torah like a literal diary.
You used a metaphor on Timon? He takes things literally.
In a very condensed nutshell, God was like, here's some land for y'all. And a couple of guys scouted out the area and went, Moses, we went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit, but the people who live there are very powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. The land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there were of great size. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. Or these 10 guys didn't believe they could conquer the land like God promised because their opponents were giants with fortified cities and they were like little bugs by comparison. And God responded what? You don't believe I'll secure your victory?
Dirt for 40 years.
And Moses was like, okay, but I can at least live to see the promised land, right? And God was like, I mean, you hit a rock 2 times, so no. And Moses was like, okay.
God sentences the nation of Israel to wander the desert for 40 years. Now, only the next generation will earn entrance to the promised land, while the current generation is forced to live out the remainder of their lives in the desert. As harsh as it might sound, the journey through the desert helps shape the Jewish people into a nation, giving them a spiritual focus that prepared them for the promised land.
It's the extreme conditions that make the desert the perfect teacher of community, as people are forced to rely on each other and their faith to survive. It seems to me that the Jewish people are unified throughout history by this shared threat of oppression and displacement. You can see how such harsh, unstable conditions would give birth to a culture based around both mutual support and also suspicion. In a world that scapegoats the Jewish people as a hobby, we Jews are taught to anticipate danger around every corner. For good reason.
Jews don't daydream because folks are after them and they gotta stay sharp, you know what I mean? They have to be there. They haven't let their minds wander since Egypt. They just stay sharp. They go, who's that? Who are you? What's that? Put that down.
Timon grows up in a closed community in the middle of the desert. Predators and harsh terrain force the meerkats underground. By necessity, the entire culture revolves around vigilance.
We have to look after each other. Our survival depends on it.
What's the point? All we do is dig so we can hide and hide so we can dig.
The Lion King 1.5 takes this vigilance to the extreme.
Don't close your eyes! Don't look away! Somebody's gonna guard us! Somebody's gonna protect us!
As a meerkat, your 2 career options are bunker maintenance or sentry duty. This leaves Timon the odd one out, as someone too scattered for sentry duty and, let's say, avant-garde for tunnel maintenance.
What? It's called a skylight.
Timon dreams of the light above ground, but the rest of the meerkat colony have accepted their world of darkness and fear as a product of nature's design.
Everything the light touches is our kingdom.
Wow. Everything the light touches belongs to someone else. What can I say? It's nature's design.
Timon is the philosopher at odds with civic life. He preaches the merits of the world outside Plato's cave, so to speak, but the public demands he conform to their traditions. By the end of the story, Timon must learn the merits of both worlds. He starts out as a staunch tunnel hater.
I want to be where we don't have to dig tunnels and live with our heads stuck in the sand.
But by the end of the story, we see him embrace their advantages.
We're gonna need, dare I say it, tunnels.
Lots and lots of tunnels.
At first, Timon believes he doesn't need company, only a nice place under an open sky. But over time, Timon realizes the value of community.
I found a place that was beyond my wildest dreams, but it still wasn't home. Let's go home, Ma.
The fact that Timon found a place beyond his wildest dreams, but it didn't feel like home until he'd brought along his mom, uncle, and the rest of the meerkats, speaks to the fact that the philosopher needs society as much as society needs the philosopher. Timon could only lead his people to the promised land once he'd realized the value of communal support. And no, I didn't pull that promised land bit out of my ass. Oh my god. Moses! If any of this analysis has set off alarm bells for you, by the way, you're not alone. I promise we'll talk about the ways Lion King meerkats are Jews, invite some truly unfortunate conclusions about Jewish culture and, the nature of our religion. For now, where was I? Oh, that's right. Fiddler on the Roof. Fiddler on the Roof tells the classic Jewish tale of Tevye, a poor Jewish milkman whose daughters collectively decide to marry men he can't stand.
No, please, no! 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 No!
Fiddler on the Roof is revered for its focus on Jewish tradition, identity, and relationships, and the way those aspects clash and evolve with the times. It's like the quintessential Jewish play. So of course one of the songs has to appear in The Lion King 1.5.
Is this the little girl I carried?
When did he grow to be so tall?
Wasn't it yesterday when they were small?
In summary, Timon Leslie Berkowitz grows up in his tight-knit, Boston-accented community of meerkats alongside his Yiddish-speaking mother and Uncle Max, surrounded by desert and hungry predators. Timon leaves to find the home of his dreams, which becomes the literal promised land for his people. And along the way, he sings a song from Fiddler on the Roof, one of the most Jewish plays to ever Jewish. A play which revolves around the ways Jewish tradition shifts over time to accommodate the needs of new generations and the evolution of old threats. So I'm sure at this point some of you are like, well, Rab, so where does the Jewishness of The Lion King 1.5 fit into the white supremacist narrative of the other films?
You know, I have a feeling everything's gonna be just fine. On the other hand...
The Oxford Dictionary defines white supremacy as the belief that white people constitute a superior race and should therefore dominate society, typically to the exclusion or detriment of other racial and ethnic groups. Now, when this dude named Charles Darwin and his friend Alfred Russel Wallace proposed a theory of evolution by natural selection, a process Wallace called survival of the fittest, white supremacists seized upon the theory as a cudgel to prove their superiority. In the words of the Harvard Library, since enslaved people were first brought to this country, promoters of anti-black racism and white supremacy have co-opted the authority of science to justify racial inequality. Thus emerged social Darwinism, described as the theory that individuals, groups, and peoples are subject to the same Darwinian laws of natural selection as plants and animals. Now largely discredited, social Darwinism was advocated by Herbert Spencer and others in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and was used to justify political conservatism, imperialism, and racism, and to discourage intervention and reform. In his paper, Social Darwinism, Scientific Racism, and the Metaphysics of Race, author Rutledge Dennis explains, Herstein and Murray assert in their work, namely the racist garbage fire known as the bell curve, that culture, intellect, and knowledge are racially determined, fixed, and hence not subject to devices of social reconstruction. Moreover, they also maintain that negative aspects of group or individual behaviors are reflections of preordained dispositions unchangeable by the group, the individual, or society. Like Sumner, they contend that any attempts to change the behaviors or improve the intellect of a given group or individual are foolish and destined to fail. Some of you may know where I'm going with this. The Lion King opens with the song The Circle of Life, which introduces the audience to the concept of, what else? The circle of life. From the day we arrive on the planet, blinking step into the sun, there's more to see than can ever be seen, more to do than can ever be done. These lines establish we, the inhabitants of this world, as small and meek in the face of nature. We blink as we step into the sun, blinded by the brilliance and power of the natural world. We are faced with a world so wide that there will always be stones left unturned, more to see than can ever be seen, so much beyond our reach and comprehension. The song goes on. The sun rolling high through the sapphire sky keeps great and small on the endless round. This segment positions the sun as a tangible force which keeps animals on the endless round, the circle of life that moves us all. We see the circle of life compared to the sun several times throughout the Lion King films. The sun, like the circle of life, works as a constant force upon the animals, one that moves by a natural, fixed cycle, which we can chart, but never hope to change. Note the lyrics, till we find our place on the path unwinding. Both the music and visuals of this scene establish the natural laws of this world. All the animals are beholden to a chain of natural laws called the circle of life, a system wherein each animal holds a specific place. The lion's place, we see, is situated at the literal top of the world, closest to the sun. The other animals' path leads them on a pilgrimage to the Pride Lands, where they then bow to the new prince. This ritual affirms the lion's place as rulers over all the other animals. But the Lion King wants us to see the circle of life as a circle, not a pyramid or a ladder, with some animals on the top and some animals on the bottom.
Everything you see exists together in a delicate balance. As king, you need to understand that balance and respect all the creatures, from the crawling ant to the leaping antelope. When we die, our bodies become the grass, and the antelope eat the grass. And so, we are all connected in the great circle of life.
Well, you see, Simba, we must respect the lower class because the lower class provides us with food and power. But one day we will die, and they'll get to scavenge our remains. And that's called trickle-down economics, a theory which makes total sense and definitely works.
But when they die, they become the grass. And we eat the grass, right?
Not exactly. We can't digest grass. We're grass intolerant.
In essence, the Lion King attempts to posit the circle of life as a sort of great equalizer. And you know, this concept makes a lot more sense when animals are animals. Like, you remove the wolves and let the deer take over Yellowstone National Park, and you get an overgrazed, uprooted landscape, ravaged prey populations, and an overpopulation of predators like coyotes. You put the wolves back, and the wolves kill the deer. The native foliage grows back. The trees shoot up to shelter the river fish. The berries feed the bears. The beavers make new dams which provide a habitat for animals like ducks and otters and fish. The wolves chase off the coyotes too, which means more mice and rabbits for predators like foxes and weasels and hawks and badgers. The carrion feeders return to follow the wolves on their hunts. The rivers even change course, their tracks secured by a lack of erosion. In the real world, a food chain exists. But even then, there's no perfect circle of life. Lawrence Frank, a research associate at Berkeley who's studied lions for over 20 years and hyenas for another 20, tells Arthur, there is no balance of nature. There is a constantly shifting relationship between thousands and thousands of species and environmental variables, but there is no single balance or the way it should be. It's one of those situations where, like, yes, the circle of life makes sense from a more general standpoint. We can acknowledge that when predators die, a lot of animals will eat their bodies as carrion or the grass that sprouts from their remains. And of course, I don't mean to suggest we as a species can shrug our shoulders and demolish entire ecosystems for fossil fuel because nature changes all the time. I mean to say, hierarchical structures naturally evolve as part of a balanced ecosystem, yes. But the theory of ecological balance is much more complicated than every animal gets one specific fixed role, and when they stray from that role, they destroy the entire ecosystem. But I've gotten off track, because that's what we do on this channel. We take the path most feral, and then we cross our fingers and hope we don't give ourselves an aneurysm before we get to the point.
We get there when we get there!
Here's the thing. Let's say the circle of life functioned as cleanly as advertised. Let's say certain animals fulfill certain roles, and that chain of roles links together to form an endless circle, and when the chain breaks down, the natural world falls into chaos. Shit still gets complicated when you consider the fact that perhaps with the exception of bugs, all the animals of the Lion King world possess human levels of intelligence. The animals behave like humans too. They hold jobs as advisors. They stage elaborate coups. They get married.
One day you two are going to be married.
Yeah.
They philosophize on the nature of life and death. Dan Hassler-Forrest, a professor of media studies and English literature from Utrecht University in the Netherlands, tells CBC Radio it's not about lions. It's a fable in which animals perform roles that we associate with human social structures. So it paints a picture of a society in which power is defined biologically and in which the weak have learned to worship at the feet of the powerful. And the only way for the herbivores to survive in this world is to become the servants and friends of the powerful. In his article for The Washington Post, Hassler-Forrest elaborates, mapping our own social hierarchies onto the pristine and neutral animal kingdom makes these power dynamics seem natural, common sense, and even desirable. And by using predator-prey relationships to allegorize human power structures, the film almost inevitably incorporates a worldview in which the ruler's power derives from their biological superiority. The lions of the Lion King are framed as the rightful rulers of the savannah, while the hyenas are framed as the dangerous, mangy outsiders from the dark side of town.
What about that shadowy place?
That's beyond our borders. You must never go there, Simba.
Rather than paint the hyenas' destitution as, the product of a bias system which rewards the lions at the hyenas' expense, the Lion King presents the hyena situation as a consequence of biological predestiny, wherein the hyenas are simply too stupid and greedy as a species to pull themselves up out of the dirt. The hyenas are only useful to Scar as foot soldiers, too scared or stupid to come up with their own coup. As the occupants of Pride Rock, the hyenas are so lazy or incompetent, or both, that rather than hunt for themselves, they choose to leech off the hard work of the lioness hunters. Once the lions go on strike and the free welfare disappears, the hyenas simply go hungry again.
Scar, there's no food, no water.
Yeah, it's dinner time, and we ain't got no stinking entrees.
It's the lioness's job to do the hunting.
Yeah, but they won't go hunt.
But why did the lions go on strike, you may ask? Because there's no prey left to hunt.
He let the hyenas take over the Pride Lands.
What?
Everything's destroyed. Simba, if you don't do something soon, everyone will starve.
In service of their bottomless greed, the hyenas have forced the lions to overhunt their land to destitution. Once the lions need to feed the hyenas on top of themselves, the Pride Lands fall to ruin, as desolate as the hyenas' dark, shadowy place home. Perhaps the hyenas' homeland was once as lush as the Pride Lands, but fell apart the same way. It becomes clear that only our hero, the lion, can restore the Elizabethan natural order.
Don't you understand? You're our only hope.
Upon Simba's victory and ascension to the throne, nature rewards the lions with a rainstorm. Because, how could I forget? The hyena's rain was so poisonous to the natural world, they caused a drought too.
Everything's destroyed. There's no food.
Per the Lion King, the hyenas are starved outcasts because, even when handed a paradise of food and power on a silver platter, they simply cannot overcome their innate greed and stupidity enough to take advantage. In short, the Pride Lands fell because the hyenas dared to supersede their natural role, and thus broke the circle of life. They are not the victims of their circumstances. Their circumstances are a consequence of their natural state as hyenas. Another relevant quote from Rutledge Dennis: "According to the logic of the bell curve, blacks or other societal have-nots, because they have failed the Darwinist Spencerian survival of the fittest test, ought not to be given social consideration, remediation, compassion, or compensation to level the playing field. This is Malthusian logic personified. Whites owe blacks nothing because, due to the latter's faulty genetics, any and all efforts to radically change their lives will come to naught. In The Lion King, the lions earned their kingship through their superior genetics. Other animals are only able to gain stature via a combination of friendship and servitude, while the ethnic minority-coded hyenas are relegated to the shadows of the world. Through this lens, you can see how the story of The Lion King runs parallel to the scientific racism employed by white supremacists. Some people would, of course, virulently disagree with my analysis here. People like Michael Knowles. Remember that quote from Dan Hosler-Forrest? Well, Hosler-Forrest wrote an article for the Washington Post on the same topic, and Fox News was not pleased with the result.
Apparently, the new Lion King and the old Lion King are fascist, racist, and anti-Semitic. They write this: "As nostalgic as Circle of Life may make us feel, this bombastic scene is also a painful reminder of the film's ideological agenda."
The Lion King is a wonderful story. It is about redemption. It is about grace. It is about endurance. It is based on Hamlet. It's based on the books of Genesis and Exodus. It is not about fascism. But because the left right now has become so culturally illiterate, the only thing that they can ever refer to in their cultural criticism is Hitler. Everything they don't like is Hitlerian or fascist or Nazi. If the left wants to go after kingdoms, I welcome it. They go after the American flag, the 4th of July, go after the Lion King. I think it's only going to help the right.
Like, if the left wants to go after kingdoms, like Michael, my buddy, my pal. I'm pretty sure going after kings and kingdoms is the most American thing you can do. I mean, besides committing genocide, stockpiling guns, and fucking up tea. Second of all, go after the Lion King. I think it's only going to help the right. I remember when I used to care about respectability politics. Conservatives will call me nuts regardless of my stance on the Lion King because I'm me. But also because my egalitarian view of society as a liberal looks like a child's fantasy to conservatives who ascribe to the framework of sharks and minnows. For more on that culture clash, you can check out Innuendo Studios' video, Always a Bigger Fish.
In conservative thinking, this hierarchy is humanity's natural state. The American dream is here, anyone can make it. No matter who you are or what you start with, you can become a billionaire. But a necessary component of this is anyone can, but everyone can't. We're not all going to be billionaires. There's a finite amount of money in this country. For any one person to have so much more than they need, there must, mathematically, be thousands of people with less. Your conservative friend is often baffled as to what you're even trying to say when you point out there's not enough high-paying jobs or affordable health plans for everyone. There's not supposed to be. The system requires an underclass. Someone's got to clean the toilets. Conservatives generally feel what's wrong with the world today can be chalked up to people not being where they should be in the social order. They used to be where they belonged, but then liberals gummed everything up with their government handouts and forced representation.
Huh. This kind of sounds like social Darwinism. It's simply a matter of fact that The Lion King as a film champions the circle of life, a celebration of biology as the core control mechanism behind a functional, balanced society, with the strongest relegated to the top of the food chain and the weakest at the bottom.
Look at you guys. No wonder we're dangling at the bottom of the food chain.
It's a matter of fact that this survival of the fittest mentality runs parallel to the racist concepts of social Darwinism. Now, the Lion King creators seem like they made an effort to walk back some of this biological racism with The Lion King 2, where they were like, the circle of life makes us all equal, though. A prospect peddled by the first film with Mufasa's whole "when we die, we become the grass" speech.
When we die, our bodies become the grass.
Mufasa, shut the fuck up, I already heard you say that. The song We Are One frames the circle of life less like the almighty enforcer of a hierarchical system, than as a great equalizer. And you know, you can call the other animals your family all you want, Simba. Your film can grab me by the scruff of the neck and shout me down about how the natural order makes us all equal. But as long as the film shows me a world where upward mobility is reserved for friends and servants of the ruling class, I'm gonna call him like I see him. Interestingly, The Lion King 2 leans a lot harder into the trilogy's religious aspects. The film's opening number features lyrics like, "Hear these words and have faith," or more to the point, "He lives in you. He lives in me. He watches over everything we see. Into the water. Into the truth. In your reflection, he lives in you." And then that lady goes, In the first film, the sun acted as a neutral force, an embodiment of the circle of life. The Lion King 2 puts a warmer, more personal face to an otherwise distant force of nature, but makes no move to interrogate the circle of life as a hand of governance. The conflict of The Lion King 2 is not that the circle of life unfairly relegates certain animals to the outskirts of society. In this conflict between Simba and his daughter, Simba does not stop to consider the ways such a system pigeonholes everyone, not only non-lions, but even members of his own family, into fixed, often undesirable roles.
As future queen...
What if I don't want to be queen?
That's like saying you don't want to be a lion. It's in your blood.
Instead, the film proposes a different problem. Simba has strayed from the circle of life. When he exiled the bad lions, Simba labeled those lions as other.
A wise king once told me, "We are one."
But they...
Them? Us. Look at them. They are us. What differences do you see?
As much as I like this message on a surface level, when you rewatch the film about 200 times as a kid, you start to go, Even when you put aside the question of equality versus equity, where we are all very different but still deserve the same basic rights, at the end of the day, these are all still lions. It does not challenge the circle of life as a system to assert that all lions deserve to be together at the top of the social ladder, because from minute one, we as an audience were primed to accept the lions as the natural-born leaders of this society. It's perfectly within the constraints of this system to proclaim, we as lions are the same species, so we belong together. I, Simba, was wrong because I forgot that lions do not belong on the outskirts. It seems to me that The Lion King 2 wants to tackle racism as a construct, but the creators don't have the time, energy, or agency to commit to the bit and, confront the actual societal issues posed by a system as reductive as the circle of life. The film refuses to acknowledge the roles of any other animals within this system, to ask why the dark lions should be forgiven when all the hyenas as a species are still relegated to the ravages of society. Here's a fun one. When I brought up the topic of the Lion King and white supremacy to my college friend, he was like, "Oh, you mean like how Antifa infiltrated a Nazi group and found out they were recruiting furries to the alt-right with music from the Lion King?"
Anti-fascist groups like Eugene Antifa, here in Oregon, have taken to infiltrating and doxing major neo-Nazi organizations and militias.
I infiltrated the group to kind of keep an eye on them, and, when you get into the group, you had to pass a voice interview. They had a list of videos that you were supposed to watch so that you would be more aware.
A lot of these videos are what you'd expect from Nazis. Documentaries about how the Holocaust didn't happen and Hitler was a cool dude, etc. But since they were recruiting furries, they tailored their propaganda to that demographic.
Of course you should feel proud to be white. Our race has achieved many great things. As you go through life, you'll see you're expected to be scared and ashamed. But study history, and you'll very quickly see our race filled the world with hope and light.
Medicine, industry, rule of law and liberty. We are more than we are white.
So that was a thing.
Enter The Lion King 1.5 at long last. In my humble opinion, The Lion King 1.5 was the first Lion King film to actually challenge the circle of life as a system. When Ma tells Timon all the nice parts of the Pride Lands belong to someone else, and that their miserable lives are nature's design, she's proven wrong by the end of the film, when Timon leads his family to a predator-free paradise, a sort of wildlife sanctuary where the meerkats can live like kings. Timon looks at the lifestyle relegated to his people under the circle of life, says, "Thanks, but fuck you very much," and carves a new place for his family alongside Savannah royalty. And now I have to take off this sweater because it is so fucking hot in here. Jesus fucking tits. Oh my god! Except, how much does this film really challenge the circle of life? Are Timon and Pumbaa a disruption or an exception? You could say they were only granted status because they were lucky enough to find and raise a lion cub. Without Simba around, who's to say whether Pumbaa would have even survived Nala's attack? It's valid to look at Timon's ascension as a product of pure meerkat tenacity. It's also valid to look at Timon's ascension as conditional, a product of a rare admission from the higher class. I'm reminded of Ratatouille, wherein Remy doesn't overhaul a prejudicial system so much as carve out a space for himself and his family within its constraints. Commenters on my Ratatouille video correctly identified this as a radical act. When faced with such an oppressive system, survival in itself becomes radical. Exceptions chart the path forward toward a new standard.
You can't change nature. Change is nature, Dad. The part that we can influence. And it starts when we decide.
On the other hand, I will point out the awkward collision point between meerkats as the exception and meerkats as an accessory to the authoritarian regime. As proposed by fake trash like the Protocols, conspiracy theorists love to peddle this narrative where the Jewish people are on this slow-burn quest for world domination. In a discussion of Wilhelm Marr, a man known as the father of modern anti-Semitism, the Jewish Virtual Library recounts, anti-Semitism interpreted Jewish assimilation as infiltration, Jewish conformity as duplicity, and Jewish integration into non-Jewish society as proof of Jewish cunning that intended world domination. Anti-Semites believe Jews use a combination of money and guile to weasel their way into positions of power.
Wow, it's like you have this special power.
You're the king? And you never told us?
Look, I'm still the same guy.
But with power.
To anti-Semites, Jews belong at the bottom of the food chain. Or dead, of course. It's not possible for the Jewish people to gain power by their own merits. To these conspiracy theorists, any ascension signals a perversion of the natural order. In the world of The Lion King, the conspiracists are correct. When Timon stands next to the lions at the top of Pride Rock, not as an advisor or a servant, but as a friend, he can't help but defy the circle of life, which would land him somewhere underground. Or, the Jew and his pig lover can only achieve status at the expense of the natural order. At least this time, no one was punished with a drought. Even when analyzed as a standalone film, The Lion King 1.5 boasts some deeply uncomfortable implications. It's like, oh great, the Jews are the small weasel-like dirt-covered scavengers who live in a cult of paranoia. Love that for us. It's hard enough to get past the whole Jews as dirty cowards who eat bugs and whose religious beliefs boil down to move dirt forever. And things only get worse when you account for Timon's role as a liberator. The word hallelujah means praise the Lord.
Be right
So
back.
together, hallelujah means let us praise the Lord. Why was this word left in Hebrew and not translated? Well, it was probably considered too sacred, too authentic to be violated in a way that would depart from the original. But the same cannot be said for the majority of the Bible, which was translated. If you enjoyed this video and would like to know the real meaning...
So when the meerkats sing, Hallelujah, let's dig again, they tie God and the act of worship directly to the act of digging, an act which they perform over and over and over again until forever, as this refrain restarts the song. Tunnel creation forms the foundation of the meerkat's entire culture, from which all other activities stem. Does Timon liberate the meerkats from their oppression under the circle of life, like Moses liberates the Jews from the Pharaoh and Egypt's false gods? Or does Timon liberate the meerkats from the Jewish God and their culture as Jews? Does he embrace the advantages of tunnels to save the day, or does he save the day when he destroys the tunnels one last time? Because, we've talked about the Jewish elements of the meerkat's culture already. The desert backdrop, the tight-knit community forged out of shared hardship, the suspicion and anxiety of a life lived on the run.
What are you, on a sugar?
Do the meerkats reshape their tradition to match the times a la Tevye, or do they abandon Judaism altogether? All this leads me to my next point. Hello, I'm Rab, and sometimes people create art, and the art says things the creator did not mean to say. At all. This video took a long time for a whole laundry list of reasons, but my main hang-up came down to a crisis of ethics. See, I like to treat stories like science projects. Sometimes I wonder if this process doesn't enliven the text at hand so much as kill it, the way dissection kills a frog. In a series of essays, philosopher Paul Ricoeur speaks on symbols, how they start as limitless potential, and the moment an observer assigns them a specific meaning, they enter a more restrictive space, like a cage. The absence of the sign from the thing is only the negative condition for the sign to reach the thing, touch it, and die in this contact. Let's take a sign. Say, water. If I were to claim this water symbolizes self-reflection and memory, the sign would then cease to be a sign. By appointing it a specific meaning, I would have relegated the sign to the realm of self-reflection and memory. I've effectively chiseled down this nebulous entity of raw, unfettered potential into a specific channel of interpretation, shaped by my personal whims and worldview. This thing I love to do, where I analyze a text almost to the point of unraveling it like a cheap holiday sweater, can start to feel like an act of violence or oppression against the text. Enter the term paranoid reading. Let's say a piece of art exists. You, as a viewer, may approach that piece of art with arms outstretched, or you may approach with one hand on the pepper spray. Danica Ellis writes for Book Riot, "Paranoid reading approaches a work, whether it's a story, tweet, TV show, photograph, or anything else that can be critiqued, from a defensive position. It anticipates bad actors and maliciousness, seeking out clues for them. Take the time I doodled this cat on my test booklet for my critical interpretations class, prophesizing my impending demise with the paraphrased John Donne quote, 'For whom does the bell toll? It tolls for thee!'
Try the new $2 cheesy double."
And my professor approached me on the next class day and asked me, "Is this a death threat?" You're very lucky I didn't take this to the dean. That's what you'd call a paranoid reading. As we've discussed, for the sake of our own survival, many marginalized people learn to approach the world from a place of suspicion. And that very warranted suspicion often carries over to the art we consume. We leverage paranoia as a shield against surprise. The theory goes, when we expect humiliation, the humiliation hurts less. It would be a mistake, I think, to condemn paranoid reading as a practice. To do so would dismiss the lived reality of marginalized readers. In her crucial article, Paranoid Reading and Reparative Reading, or You're So Paranoid You Probably Think This Introduction Is About You, Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick suggests, paranoia knows some things well and others poorly. As in, paranoid reading is simply one strategy among many, as neutral as a hammer in a toolbox, which can be used to great effect in some projects, but may cause damage when applied too liberally or without the proper consideration. It seems to me a great loss, Sedgwick writes, when paranoid inquiry comes to seem entirely coextensive with critical theoretical inquiry, rather than being viewed as one kind of cognitive, affective, theoretical practice among other alternative kinds. In short, the issue is less with paranoid inquiry as a concept and more paranoid inquiry heralded as the be-all end-all of critical analysis. With such close attention to detail, paranoid analysis can create some crucial commentary on, the ways our violent conditions shape the art we create and consume. But at the same time, the paranoid approach lends itself to selective reading. In our anticipation of humiliation, we become vulnerable to confirmation bias. We are more likely to assign harm where none exists, or amplify small slights to suit a more negative take. I do think there's merit to an analysis of The Lion King as a white supremacist narrative, and The Lion King 1.5 as a Jewish narrative. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made this video.
On the other hand,
you can see the ways I've cherry-picked my points to paint this specific picture, right? I harp on the hyenas and the way the film codes them as people of color, yet I fail to account for the fact that Mufasa, Sarabi, Rafiki, and young Nala, all good guys, were played by black actors. I describe the hyenas as victims of a white supremacist state and leave out the part where they goose-step like Nazis. The Lion King 1.5 references Mystery Science Theater 3000 and even Casablanca. It features all sorts of songs from pop culture, like Grazing in the Grass, Jungle Boogie, and the Peter Gunn theme. Yet I only address the Jewish references. When I reached out to the film's writer, Tom Rogers, to ask about The Lion King 1.5's Jewish connotations, Rogers replied, "Thanks for writing. Your question made me chuckle, because it reminds me how much we see, hear, read things through the lens of our own experience. You're right that a couple of references call to mind Jewish things. The Yiddish probably was a product of casting Jerry Stiller as Timon's Uncle Max and then writing to his comedic persona. And Sunrise Sunset just seemed like a funny and over-the-top reference for parents watching their kid grow up. But beyond that, there weren't any specifically Jewish undercurrents in the show. They were just two in a smorgasbord of gags and references that we pulled from any and everywhere. From Tom Stoppard to QVC to Hamlet to Mystery Science Theater 3000 to Jungle Boogie to house hunting TV shows. Also, some of the things you cite about meerkats, living in the savannah and being hyper alert for predators, are just based on how meerkats actually live and behave. They take turns standing sentry duty while the rest eat. If a predator appears, the sentry will squeak a warning that gets broadcast to the entire group. Google meerkat alarm to see them in action. Well, yeah, I did know that, Tom. I watched Meerkat Manor like every other maladjusted queer preteen with an Animal Planet subscription.
The desert has lost its favorite rose.
Flower, no! It's not about the literal animals, Tom. It's about the symbolism. It's the symbolism, Tom! It's about the symbolism! We're in the universe of signs, Tom. Can't you see the structuralism, Tom? Every word is an abstraction within a closed system, Tom. We live in fear, Tom. We live in a world of coded abstraction, Tom. Nothing we see is real, all filtered through the lens of our limited senses. Your red is different from my red. I can't see through the blood. So anyway, it matters to me that these messages were unintentional. Rogers and company chucked a bunch of references at the wall, and I, as a product of my own queer Jewish suspicion, picked out a hopscotch path across those references to land upon the worst possible outcome. So here's the deal. I get why Meerkats as Jews comes with that monkey reaction pic stapled to one side. But what representation offends one viewer will surely uplift another, because minority groups are not monolithic. As a Jewish person, I love Timon. I love that he's a daydreamer and an asshole most of the time, and that he cares about his family more than he lets on. And I love that he's Jewish.
Hey, show people.
I get that these are loaded topics which require a certain amount of nuance. But where the arts are concerned, I vouch for variety over censorship. The moment we exile minority representation to the narrow margins of good optics, so too do we restrict minority artists' ability to tell their own stories. We get representation the depth of an after-school special. I know some people will take this video as a call to ban The Lion King, or as a cone of shame around the necks of those who love The Lion King. That's the reason I gotta be clear. I don't mean to paint Timon and his Jewish family as a problem to be solved, nor would I ever demand that all subsequent Lion King films condemn the circle of life as a social Darwinist regime. We can discuss those problematic tropes, but to banish the Lion King films to the pit of shame, to deem them too dangerous or offensive for consumption, I feel like that would be a disservice to, critical consumption as a concept. It's possible to acknowledge the positive and problematic aspects of a story at the same time. If we're worried our kids might have taken the wrong message from a film, we can sit them down and talk to them. Also, to condemn The Lion King for this one paranoid read would disregard all the other equally valid analyses of this film. You can read Simba as a fascist dictator, or, like Don Hahn, the film's original producer, you can read Simba as a fusion of Moses and Joseph, his story an adaptation of Exodus and Genesis. You can look at The Lion King as an homage to Shakespeare's Hamlet, or the story of Sunjata Keita, the Lion of Mali, and the rise of the Malian Empire. You can look at The Lion King 1.5 as a story about Jewish tenacity, or the plight of Zulu miners, or a smorgasbord of gags and references with no deeper prospects, or the love child of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Look at this. Watch closely.
Anyone else obsessed with the way Tom Rogers subverted the fatalism of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead by handing over the narrative to the characters to direct as they pleased? Because it's your cock. Throughout this process, I was so bothered by the question of whether my video perpetuated this culture of reductive analysis. Was there an ethical way for me to make this video? My quest for answers led me back to Ricoeur's The Conflict of Interpretations, Essays and Hermeneutics.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Now, what I learned about Paul Ricoeur is he's got a lot of stuff to say.
Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Like me and so many others, Paul here had a crisis over the, innate violence of interpretation. He was like, if to comprehend language is to interpret signs, and to interpret signs is to limit their potential, then at the same moment you uncover meaning, you obscure meaning. So that's kind of fucked up, right? Is a nonviolent approach to analysis even possible? Oh, fucking me, I died. I died in 2005, which sucks ass because this person who made a video essay on The Lion King would have really liked to yell at me about how fucking long my book is, or just tell me to get to the fucking point. Paul here suggests that to ever undo the violence of analysis, one must enter something called the hermeneutic circle. Okay, so the plan was to use this as a canvas to try and explain the hermeneutic circle, but I can't not color Simba. I mean, come on. Everything is blue for him and himself and everybody ran in a meow 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 meow. Lead the pictures in his mind. Just up and I felt tired. He said, "I'll rest a little while." Exquisite.
Gee, he looks blue.
Here's a circle. Don't fuck with me, I'm using a mouse, it's fine. This is our context. And this is our text. Okay, so the hermeneutic circle, from what I can tell, only works as a reparative exercise if you're able to bring an open mind to the process, right? Okay, good. This is us. The context that makes us who we are, right? All our baggage, all our suspicion. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna engage with the text. Wow. Okay, so this text is gonna, in some way, cause us to ask questions about ourselves or maybe challenge our worldview. And what do you know? That gives us new context about ourselves and about the text, right? And so what do we do with that? Okay, we've got, all these new questions, all these new thoughts. We can direct that energy back at the text. And through this new read, we learn even more. And we can go around again. Wow, that made me want to go back. Whoa, and then I can go back with new context that I learned from that new past, and I can do this over and over and over and over. And some of you may ask, doesn't this ask too much of the reader, right? To engage with the material, to this degree. And I get that. Personally, I feel like the hermeneutic circle is less an expectation and more an ideal to strive for, right? Like a reminder to sort of step back and assess the whole with the parts, and maybe make a conscious effort to come at that story from different angles. I don't think there's any purely reparative way to approach a text. But, I think that's, a nice goal. And I don't know what else to say about this other than this video was supposed to be 10 minutes. At the end of the day, I can't boomerang around this hermeneutic circle forever, because then this video would never end. But I can tell you I've learned a lot on this wild run through the desert. I hope that when I doubled back, I maybe undid some of the damage, and I hope that I've passed the ball on to you. If you'd like to keep these existential crises sponsor-free, you can sign up for my Patreon. $1 per video lands you a slot on these here credits. $3 and up gets you sneak peeks and early access to my videos. All the hugs to my top patrons: Achyutha Ananda, Acute Latios, Amy Holschwander, Apathetic Gaiety, Benji M, Broomhilda, Can Be Coy, Council of Geeks, Dane, Ginny Brown, Mika13, Miranda, Anna Doodles, and so has to Litha. Seriously, you guys, thank you so fucking much for your support. And of course, thank you to all the sinners who stayed till the end of this video. I leave you with this famous quote from Paul Ricker. I lean to the left and crank that thing, now. I'm jocking on your bitch ass. And if we get the fighting, then I'm cocking on your bitch ass. Soja boy, watch me crank it. Watch me roll. Watch me crank that Soja boy.
When I do that, Soja boy, I lean to the left and crank that thing now. I'm jocking on your jock.